Before I wrap up this video, I want to talk about few quick tips, tricks, and suggestions that I have for you as a bonus as a part of this video. Some of them might sound obvious, but I highly suggest that you probably go through all of them and try each and every one of them. First thing is, I always suggest people always start with a fully charged battery and an empty memory card. Now, this is something which I would say many, if not for all photographers, have gone through this. We go to a particular photo shoot, and then we start shooting and we see that battery is about to die or there is not enough space in your memory card. So, always before going into any shoot or before even packing anything, make sure that your memory cards are formatted. But before formatting the memory card, make sure that it is backed up enough. Probably, I would say a minimum of two backups at least on two different places before even formatting the memory card. And secondly, make sure that all your batteries are charged. Don't ever limit yourself to having just one battery after you have bought your camera. Have at least two, or if your budget permits, have at least three batteries along with your camera, because missing out a shot because you don't have a battery is something next to bigger embarrassment. So always have enough number of batteries and enough number of charged batteries. Talking about having a formatted memory card and also charged up batteries, I want to bring in one more point, which is about resetting your camera. If you're somebody who is on a multi-day trip and you would have probably gone out to shoot something related to astrophotography or something in the night, you might have set your camera to say slower shutter speed and higher ISO. Make sure that either before winding up the day or before starting shooting the next day, reset all these values. Bring your shutter speed to say like 1 by 250th or 1 by 500 because next you're shooting on a daytime, or reduce the ISO to the least possible value, which is 100. If not, what will happen is night you left it in a settings which was meant for astrophotography. Next day morning you open the camera and start shooting and you see that all the scenes are coming overexposed, and you might miss out on certain key action that is happening in front of you. So always reset your camera before winding up the day or before starting your shoot on a given day. Know your buttons and dials. The basic beginner cameras come with probably minimal number of buttons and dials, but the advanced cameras come with multiple dials on top and the back and joystick and things like that. So always know what each button is meant for. Some of the advanced cameras allow you to set a particular function that you want to access quickly to a button, so you can probably do all those things and configure the dials the way you want it to happen. And I've written RTFM. Probably what I suggest is Google for what does RTFM means and follow that before you proceed further. The next thing I would suggest is back button autofocus. This is something probably I would say which is very niche even as of this day, because as many number of photographers, especially youngsters that I come across, they say that they use the shutter button itself for focusing. Not that it is bad. We have started doing it, and some of the cases even we continue doing it. But it's ideal that you use the back button autofocus, which is there in most of the mid or higher end cameras, so that you can separate out the variables which is focusing and the shutter, so that your thumb controls the focus and your index finger is mainly concentrated about shutter triggering. As much as possible, always try to use a stable surface or a tripod. I'm one person who is always in for using a tripod when you're photographing. There might be a situation wherein you're shooting events, or there might be a situation wherein you're doing travel and the places where you're traveling to might not allow you to use tripod, but are situations wherein the camera shake is not at all a concern. I would highly recommend that you use a stable surface to rest your camera on, or probably if permits use a mini tripod or even a full-fledged tripod when you're taking photograph to get sharper images. I probably mentioned this in the beginning of the video, that is when we were talking about self timer. When you're using slow shutter, especially things like astrophotography, or probably when you're doing traffic light trails type of photography, when you press the shutter, that particular impact of the finger on the shutter might introduce camera shake. So what I suggest you to do is, especially when you're shooting slow shutter speed, always try to use self timer, so that once you've clicked on the shutter, it takes like say next 2 seconds or 10 seconds for the actual image to be taken, so that you can take off your hand and allow the camera to take the photograph. Now the next 4 points are sort of very generic and it's not specific to any camera settings or anything like that, but this is something which I always suggest to people who reach out to me when they want to learn photography, or when I'm teaching in a workshop or something. I always say that always try to incorporate variation in composition. You might be in a scene wherein you're shooting a landscape, but that doesn't limit you to shoot the particular scene even in the portrait orientation. If you're using a zoom lens, then I would try to suggest you to get few frames on extreme ends of the focal length so that you have variations which you can use if required in future. The same is the case. Not all portraits need to be taken in the portrait orientation of the camera. You can take very good photographs of people faces even when the camera is in landscape orientation. Try this out and it will definitely be of very good help to you. There are rules, and of course there are rules of composition. There are things like rule of thirds and stuff like that which you need to learn. That might be a little bit of overhead for the video that we are going through right now. Probably I'll come back to this at a later point wherein I can teach you about rules of composition. But once you have mastered your camera on how to get the correct exposure and how to decide what autofocus points to use, what buffer rate to use, and things like that, I highly recommend spend some time learning the rules of composition. And not just that you have to stick to them, you should also know when to break them to get the image that you want. The next point is about shoot more and shoot often. What happens with beginners getting into photography is that they pick up a camera, they get overexcited, they start charging the batteries, go on an empty memory card, start shooting, and this enthusiasm drops over a period of time. And once you give a gap between your learning and your implementation, you start seeing that you are losing out the touch on how you take the images, be it related to the technical aspect or it can be even the creative aspects. So what I always suggest is that try to shoot as much as possible. Even if you can't carry your dslr or mirrorless cameras, try to shoot with your, most of the smartphones nowadays come with very fantastic cameras. So to practice things like composition and stuff like that, try to use your smartphone so that you're staying updated, and also you know what you need to do when you're actually picking up your dslr and going for an actual shoot. Shooting very often really helps you stay connected to your camera, and also it'll make you well versed with the settings, the buttons, the dials on your camera. Last but not the least, shoot variety. This again is something which I started suggesting people of late, and I highly recommend people do this. People are stuck to certain genres. Like for me personally, I predominantly shoot landscape images, architectures, and wildlife, things like that. But there might be situations wherein there's a downtime either on a personal front or on the situation where you want to shoot, wherein this is exactly where I would suggest that you bring in an aspect of variety into your genres. Like if you're a landscape photographer, probably try to explore portrait. And if you are somebody who's doing too many architecture, I would suggest try to bring in an aspect of street photography into your practice ritual, so that not only you get to learn something new, but at times you might feel that certain aspect that you use in the new genre that you learned can be implemented in your base area. Say for example the things like architecture photography, so it's like you go there broad daylight, you shoot something, different angles, different composition, that's all fine. But the moment you start learning, say, a different genre, say light painting or astrophotography, you know that you can add in that extra variable into your architecture photo. So instead of shooting your architecture in the daytime, you might now want to go back and shoot the same building in the nighttime by doing a little bit of light painting and things like that. So shooting variety or learning a variety of genres will definitely help you improve your photography. So hope the time that you have spent over the last hour or more learning about different aspects of photography, learning about different settings, how it impacts your photo, and how you need to take the best possible control out of your image was helpful to you guys. And the tips in the end, probably that would have added some value to whatever you learned in this particular video. If you guys have any specific questions about whatever you learned, or if you have questions wherein you want to learn more about a certain feature, feel free to reach out to me either in the comment section in this video or through the email that you find below the video. So before I sign off, I want to say three things. One is, now that you have learned all these things, I highly suggest you guys to pick up your camera, go out and shoot and practice so that you can implement these learnings in your day-to-day shoot. Second thing is, if you like this video, if you learned something new, I request you to share this video with your friends or your colleagues or even your family members who wants to learn more about photography and more so about basics of photography. Last but not the least, there's a small survey form in the description of this particular video. I would request you to fill up the survey form, which will help me plan for the future videos very well. Thanks a lot for your time. Good luck for all your photography endeavors. Wish you the best of the light. Thank you once again. This is me, Shiv, signing off, and I'll see you in the next one.